the more you get a feeling for how the Buddha's mind can manifest in different physical forms in order to benefit sentient beings, then the more these different appearances of the Buddha, you start looking at them and understanding them and seeing how they communicate to you simply through the physical form. Okay, so Tara is green, green like, springtime or summer, everything's growing, and the whole way she's sitting is, reaching out for sentient beings on the right side, being completely firm, on the left side. And similarly, Chenrezig, the body language, the form of Chenrezig, 1,000 arms like this. Yeah. Have you ever watched people sometimes? They meet new people and they talk like this. I've watched this men more than women, I think. Yeah, guys, you can tell me if it's true. But I'll see men talking to each other. They're like this. Yeah, that gives you does that give you a different feeling than this? Yeah, women do that too. But, this. And just even when you have your hands it gives the other person a different feeling. And you yourself have a different feeling when you're like this versus when you're like this. Yeah, so it works both ways. Yeah, so, the more we meditate with these different forms, we can see how they, through symbolism, bring out the different qualities in us and help us get a taste of those kind of qualities. Yeah. In the book that I'm working on, he talks about, now of course the Buddha could have told you this 2 millennia ago, but they're talking about how scientists have, talked about, reinforcing neural pathways, yeah, and that the more you do a certain action, or even the more you imagine doing a certain action, the more those neural pathways get worn in, or, and so then it becomes easier to do the action. Yeah, because you have that familiarity with your neural pathways, needless to say with your mind as well. So the more you habituate to something, then the more those qualities are easier and the more likely they are to arise in your mind just at other times in your life. And so the whole idea of doing the Chenrezig practice is similar to that. We make a habit of imagining Chenrezig, and how Chenrezig looks communicates something to us, about qualities of compassion and openness and equanimity and mental peace and calm. And so the more we get familiar with those qualities through the visualization, through the meditation, through the different recitation of verses that we do, then too, the easier it becomes to generate those qualities, and the more those qualities are going to just kind of appear in our life, in our daily life. So it's the same kind of thing. Shantideva said in the 8th century in his text, Guide to a Bodhisattva's Way, also translated as Engaging in the Bodhisattva's Deeds, he said there's nothing that doesn't get easier with familiarity. Yeah, so that's it. Yeah, and I wonder I'm sure scientists have done studies about how the way different images affect us and what things they make come in our mind. The whole thing about if you in a movie theater show some microsecond image of popcorn, then or Coke, then everybody wants to get up and, not everybody, but many people want to get up and go get popcorn and Coke. And that's not even something they're consciously focusing on or consciously aware that has been in their mind. So you can imagine if you are consciously focusing on, this, and consciously doing the meditations like we've been discussing on equanimity and so forth, to really develop that quality in us, then, you can see how it's going to be there and it's going to infiltrate our life. Yeah, and that's the kind of infiltration we want. Now, sometimes you hear people at maybe their parents or maybe their children at the beginning say, "Sounds like Buddhism is brainwashing you." And to which people usually respond, "Well, my brain needs some washing." Yeah. In other words, the way I'm thinking is sometimes really on the moon and it needs some correction. So, by any means we can employ to transform our thoughts, then that's something that's very good. So sometimes we use the more analytical method, like we have been when we're, meditating on equanimity or the kindness of our parents, where we're actively thinking about these things. And other times we use a more imaginative, symbolic method, like when we're visualizing the deity or chanting the mantra. Yeah, and you can see, does chanting the mantra, can you feel the energy of that? Yeah, and somehow just even in your body energy, your physical energy, it's somehow, sound affects even our physical energy. And that you could call it the wind energies or the chi, how sound affects that, and then that also has an impact on the mind. Yeah, and so, reciting the mantra has, again, a kind of effect on us, but it's not maybe, this analytical way of doing things. It's more experiential or more kinesthetic. But many people learn better, by those kinds of kinesthetic means. Okay. Some days when you might feel like your energy and the mantra's energy are not jiving. I've had that experience, it's like, kind of, I'll do a lot of mantra and like my own energy is, it's not going in. And then I look at my mind and I see, oh, well, that's because of what I'm thinking, and what's going on in my mind is influencing my energy. And so it then feels like my energy is not jiving with that compassionate vibration of the mantra. Yeah, and so then if I focus on the sound of the mantra and try and let go of my angry rumination or whatever it is, then that kind of energy comes more into the body and into the mind. Yeah, so it's a way, again, to work with things as they come up in our lives, and instead of just anger coming up and saying, well, there it is, I have no choice. To see that there's things that we can do to change the situation. Okay. So did you do some contemplation about the kindness of your parents and caregivers? Yeah. Did anything particular come up while you were doing that be helpful to discuss? Mm-hmm.
For me, one of the things about doing that kind of meditation over and over is when I'm in a public place, like a train or something, and I see my mind going to all these really judgmental places, or if I'm about to do something that feels like I disturb someone, I actually start thinking of my mother. If this were my mother, would I want to do what I'm about to do? Would I want to disturb them? Would I want to be standing there being judgmental and stuff? So that kind of really helps me.
Okay. This is a very practical way of applying it when you're on the train or the bus or whatever. So it sounds like you're using it in two ways. One is when your mind starts to judge others, then you think, well, this is my mother who's been kind to me. Would I want to sit and cultivate that kind of mental state towards my mother? And then second is, if you're feeling like the tendency to do something that could possibly disturb somebody else, then to stop and think, oh, would I want to act that way towards somebody that I really love, like my mom? And so it helps you settle your mind and consider your actions before you do them. Yeah. Tree?
It occurred to me as I was doing this to ask the question, is there any benefit in thinking of the other people as your children instead of your mother?
Okay. Now sometimes there is a way of meditating. I've read it in the Pali tradition where you meditate on other people as your children and have that try and cultivate that same feeling of care and affection and tolerance that you would have for your own children. Yeah, and so, both ways, as your parents or as your children, cultivate this feeling of closeness. But I think there's a difference in how the closeness comes out. When we think of others as our parents, then we're the ones who are really dependent. And that, seeing ourselves as completely dependent on the kindness of others is different than thinking of others as our children, where they're dependent on us, and we're the ones who are competent and in control, supposedly. Okay? So it has a different flavor. And I think for us to see ourselves as, really being vulnerable and being taken care of by other people for many, many years and taught and educated and, so many things like this when we were totally unable to take care of ourselves. That has a particular effect on the mind that makes us really, it brings more the feeling of gratitude. Seeing other sentient beings as your children doesn't bring that same feeling of gratitude that seeing them as your parents do. And I think that gratitude is a very important emotion to feel on the path. It's one that's not always talked about. Yeah, but it's something that I think is very important, and especially in the West, where we have a consumer society and we feel that we have the right to demand anything that we want because we're paying for it. Yeah, so our mentality is, I want this, you do it, and I'll pay you for it. Instead of, wow, you're doing that, I benefit, I'm so grateful for your kindness. Yeah, and so that's why I think the gratitude is important. It makes us really see the kindness of others and see our dependency. And it frees us from this mind that says, I can just go in anywhere and demand what I want. Because it's, a consumer society and the customer's right. Until they convince you that you aren't. Yeah, but so I think gratitude's quite important, especially, again, because we have this feeling of being quite independent in the West. We're this independent person, picking ourselves up by our own bootstraps, this competent, efficient, unique, individual who's unlike anybody else in the universe. Independent. And that's the kind of way we are socialized to think of ourselves. And it actually can bring many difficulties to us. Thinking of ourselves in this way. And when you asked yesterday about why we have this self-hatred, I think this socialization of we're this unique individual, unlike everybody else, contributes to that. Yeah? Because then we have to try and make ourselves unique, but in a conforming way. Because it's true, isn't it? Yeah, you have to conform in a unique way and be unique in a conforming way. Because you can't be too far out. You have to be unique enough so that others respect you and admire you, but not so unique that they think you're nuts. Okay? And this, how do you get that balance? It's really crazy making. Yeah? So it's very easy for low self-esteem to set in that kind of mental ambience, where we're trying to make ourselves into what we think other people think we should be, but we're not quite sure if we've done it properly. Yeah, so there's all sorts of anxiety, all sorts of self-doubt, and so that just, fits into this whole conundrum of low self-esteem and self-hatred. Okay? Whereas gratitude completely changes the picture, doesn't it? I mean, did you I just even said that word gratitude, and then I got a completely different feeling than what I had been talking about 10 seconds before. Because I know when I feel gratitude, there's something about my heart that's so open, so soft, so gentle. I'm not self-conscious when I feel grateful to others. I'm not thinking about, do they like me? Am I being unique enough in the conforming way, to make my presence known? And this, none of that is in my mind when I'm feeling grateful. When I'm feeling grateful, there's just this very beautiful, warm energy. Seeing other sentient beings as kind and seeing them as lovable. Mm-hmm. So maybe we need more gratitude training in our school. Yeah? Because, having lived in Singapore, I see in Singapore, the children are taught to be grateful. At least the older generation. They're taught. Now, whether they are or not. Yeah, but especially, the people kind of, maybe it's changing now with the younger generation, but people are taught to respect their parents. They're taught to support their parents. Yeah, we're taught that our parents support us. They're taught we support our parents. Yeah?
What came up very strongly for me was the kindness of my father.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about this because he had an abusive father, and my uncle actually committed suicide. But he made that determination not to become like his father.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in all 29 years of my life, I've seen him lose his temper twice, and he came and apologized to us afterwards.
Wow.
So he just had this commitment that he was not going to be like that because he wanted to destroy his family. And what really amazed me to see was that he has no anger towards his father. Because I asked him before, are you angry that all this happened? And he said, oh, he was a responsible dad. He put food on the table. So that's always very mind-boggling to me. And I think that generation feels very strongly that they have to take care of their parents. So we kept our grandfather until he passed away. There was like no question about it.
Yeah.
And I guess what really inspired me was that his one man's decision not to follow anger had a very profound effect on our whole family.
Yes. Yeah. And certainly on all the people he worked with in his career, too. Yeah. One person working with their anger can have big effects. Okay. Other things? Yeah.
This is a practice that I've been doing for years around my childhood. And what came up for me again is to, I've never been able to see their kindness because of hard time. But when I think of my parents and I think of what they managed to do despite the difficult mental states that they were overpowered by,
Mm-hmm.
you know, their sense of responsibility to us was never abandoned. And even though they had these really volatile tempers and were unpredictable, there was this kindness that was in there that they were trying to show in the middle of all of that chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And I never could see it because all that was in my face is what happened to me. And this, I continue to do this just to bring up the incredible kindness within their limited capacity to their
Mhm.
parents. I mean,
Yeah.
one was an orphan, and one was incredibly abused as a child. They had no parenting modeling. I mean, they ended up raising 3 quite good people.
Yeah.
So I knew that I got something that I didn't see beforehand that I now can see. Some good qualities I have that came from their modeling.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's very important, isn't it? You know, to really see the situation of our parents. Yeah, instead of always looking at it through me and what I want and what was done to me, to just see what their situation was and how they really did do the best they could, given their skills, given their conditioning, given everything else. Yeah. And it's, you know, when you've spent a long time being angry, it's quite humbling to see, wow, you know, they've really did a lot for me. Yeah. And so that's why I think that even when we've had bad relationships with our parents, at some time or another, we have to do this meditation with them so that we could get beyond those limited, angry feelings, you know, that keep us imprisoned. And really be able to see the kindness. Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
I had a kind of different aspect of insight. I was thinking of my mother and how much I'm grateful for everything that she's done.
Mm-hmm.
The expectation behind it, that she will always love me. And then when we were discussing, I was thinking, well, if she has dementia, for example, she doesn't even know who I am.
Right.
And how I will feel. And it's quite earth-shaking for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because sometimes we, you know, we can get very attached to somebody else's love for us and their comfort and their support and their encouragement. And then when you think that they're always not going to be who they are, yeah, and, you know, our parents may not even recognize us at some point. Or may even see us as an enemy, you know, when you have dementia or Alzheimer's. Yeah, you can see anybody who walks in the room as an enemy. Yeah, and so being able to hold on to that feeling of gratitude towards them for what they have done without the mind insisting that they always continue to do that. And I think that's the trick also in making that leap to seeing others as having been our mothers, even though this lifetime they may not be treating us in the way we think mothers should treat us. Yeah. Yeah. And to realize that people are not some concrete personality, and we shouldn't expect them always to be the same way. And from one lifetime to a next, the role's going to change, the personality's going to change. I mean, your present life mother, in another 100 years, if you met her, you wouldn't recognize her. You could walk past her on the street, you wouldn't know who she was. She might even be a totally different life form. Yeah. So to have that kind of idea of just, you know, people not being fixed personalities, but from our side, regardless of how they treat us at this particular time, to remember that in the past they have treated us with immense kindness and affection. And when we can habituate our mind with that, then whoever we meet, we feel close to. We also see that person as having the ability to be affectionate and kind. Instead of seeing them as, okay, this is Osama bin Laden, inherently evil, you think, well, maybe last lifetime he was my mother. And he didn't look like when he was our mother, he didn't look like he looks in this lifetime. He didn't, act like he acted in this lifetime. I bet towards his kids he was incredibly kind. Yeah? It's not like somebody's thoroughly 100% evil. That's not how sentient beings are. But if we can see beings as having been kind to us in the past, then it opens that way to see that they have that ability even now. And that may be due to the social relationship now, or maybe due to their conditioning in this life, or whatever it is. Their kindness is not coming out so much, at least towards us, but we still see them as having that possibility. Okay? This way of seeing the kindness of others is, let's put it this way. The other way of seeing the kindness of others, where we also are just thinking about in regular society how everything we have, everything we do, everything we know comes from others. That way is said to be a not a higher way, but a kind of more, maybe a more advanced way of seeing the kindness of others. Because seeing them as our mother, we're relating to that kindness that they showed me personally, because I was me, because I was their child. Whereas the other way of seeing the kindness, where we realize that the guys out there who are working now, who you may not even know their names, next time you come here and you enjoy Chenrezig Hall, you can think how kind they were for, building it and using their whole life energy to build this thing that we just walk in and enjoy. So that's quite different, because their kindness is not shown explicitly towards us because we're their precious child. So it requires more on our part to really open up and see the kindness and dependency. Yeah, whereas the one of seeing our sentient beings as having been our parents, it's much easier for this self-centered mind to arise, because we were their children. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm doing sometimes the meditation that I imagine I had it many years ago in a very strong relationship, and then but later I use it as a kind of visualization when I remember falling in love, for example, and you're so focused on a person and you forget actually the fact, the reality, how things exist. But then when you question yourself, is it really how I am existing when I'm so focused on one person, and will it really something what is really beneficial for myself? No, because I'm cutting myself, I'm not alive actually, so I will not develop when I'm only focused on this one person. And this is not reality.
Yeah. Okay, so you're talking about this kind of coming back to equanimity in a way. Yeah, when we focus just on one person, or it could be in the example of parent-child, you're just focused on one person and pouring all your love into one person, and then asking yourself, is this really realistic? Are things really like that all my love should be directed towards one person? Yeah, and we see, well, no, it's not so realistic. Yeah, because what's the difference between that person and other beings in the deeper area of everybody wanting happiness and not suffering? or in the deeper area of everybody at one time or another having been our parent and been kind to us. Yeah? And so really seeing that, I think that's very good, that when you're focused just on one person or just on a few people, you're really limiting your love. You're limiting your ability to connect with people and to share with people. Mm-hmm. And there's kind of a fixed pie mentality of, I've got to share love with this small group, and if they love somebody else, they can't love me, or if I love somebody else, I can't love them. Whereas in the kind of love that and we're going to get into that today, that we're creating here in the 7-point instruction, we want to spread it as widely as possible so that whoever we're with, we can feel close to, we can feel affection for. Yeah, so it really entails moving beyond the kind of attachment love that we have in families. Yeah, or in romantic relationships.
Yeah, I think the corollary is that if you're focused, and this is my personal experience, obviously, you're focused completely on one person, and that love is then pulled away or denied, then you're still focused on that one person, but it's a really negative focus, and you actually really, then you insulate yourself further from other people.
Mm. So you're saying that if you focus on one person, and then if that person doesn't give you the love that you want, then it turns into something quite negative. Yeah. We've all experienced that, haven't we? Haven't we all experienced that? Yeah. And that's because that love was actually more attachment than it was love. Yeah. And it's very difficult for us to differentiate between love and attachment until we experience the pain. When we experience the pain, then we know that there was attachment. Yeah, so we try and grow up and become aware of these things so that we don't keep knocking into that kind of pain. Yeah, because separation always happens in samsara. Separation is the rule. It's just, you can't always be with somebody. They're going to die or you're going to die unless you separate before that. So, yeah, attachment brings problems. Yeah.
It seems like when you're young, your dependency is on one person, and focusing on your relationship with your mother is a good way to run it. And as you get older, you become more and more dependent on lots of people to be able to continue your life. And so focusing on the gratitude and the ability for all these other people to be aiding you when you're aging, for me, is a interesting perspective.
Yeah, right. And you know that thing of bonding with your mother or whoever the caregiver was when you were little is very, very important. You know, they've done all sorts of studies that people who have that kind of bonding are more stable when they grow up as adults. Of course, there's also different sorts of ways of bonding, you know, which can influence your kind of psychological states later on. But yeah, so that relationship with one person is important when you're little. But it's true, as you grow, your world expands, doesn't it? Yeah, and, you know, the one person was important because that was the source of food. Food and, you know, immediate protection. And when we were infants, that was the major thing. Yeah, what do we need to stay alive? Food and immediate protection. As we get older, then, you know, we see we need language, we need skills, we need all sorts of other things. And that's where many other people come into play, sharing with us what they know and helping us. Yeah, and so from our side, to learn to expand that feeling of gratitude to many, many people. Yeah, Yeah, it's really rather amazing when we think of how many people have helped us since we were little. Now, you think of your grammar school teachers and your friends in grammar school and, all sorts of people that just came out of the blue that helped us in our life. Hmm? Yeah?
I'm puzzling over this difference between using my mother and thinking of the kindness of beings in a more general way. It seems like every single way we do it, we have to use me and my right now. Because we say my mother,
Yeah.
mine, then we say they benefit me and I go in the building.
Right.
And we say I exchange myself with others because they're like me.
Mhm.
So I've been puzzling it all. It all comes back to this.
Yeah.
Is there a way to do it?
Well, I think, yeah, it is, coming back to me in one way or another, but it's doing that in the attempt to help us broaden that perspective. So especially when we get to exchanging self and others, then when you say the word I, you're referring to others. You have completely flipped it, so that when you say, I want happiness, the meaning is others want happiness. That's when it really hits, is when you completely flip it and see, that there's really no difference between self and others. And given that fact, there's no reason to cherish our own happiness more than anybody else's, especially when others are more numerous than ourselves. Yeah? So then the word I refers to others. The word others refers to me.
I was feeling very trapped there for a little.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah?
I was listening to what Phil was just saying. I was just thinking that one of the things that I do to try to combat that feeling of that I and you, is going back to riding on the train. I'll sit there and think, you know what? They wouldn't build a train if it's just me riding. They wouldn't build a boat just for me to ride my bike over. So that kind of helps me.
Yes. Yeah, that's very true. When we're thinking of the kindness of people for the work in society, to see, yeah, they're not going to fly the plane for me. They're not going to build the train tracks for me. Yeah. And even when we see a situation like this, we're not going to have a retreat for us as one person. In so many areas of our life, it's the whole thing of joining together with others to create the cause for something that is mutually beneficial for everybody to occur. Yeah. And actually, that's another perspective to really consider, to really put our attention on how often we have to join together with others to get something that benefits ourselves. How often the benefit we receive is not because of us as an individual, but because of us as a member of a group. Yeah. So that too can help us come out of this mentality of it's all about me. Yeah. Because it's not, why did we go to school? Because there were lots of kids that needed to be educated. Yeah. So it makes you think, for kids who are home educated, I really wonder sometimes what that's like, to have your parent also be your teacher. Yeah, because they're very different roles there. And I wonder what it's like combining them. And for all of us who, anybody here homeschooled? Nobody? You were?
I wasn't homeschooled, but for a long time my mom was my piano teacher.
Oh.
And this was very confusing.
Okay.
And so, to make it even worse, she had perfect pitch. And so I'd be practicing it and screaming out the right notes to play. So it was not a harmonious thing. At a certain point she saw that this was not good for either of us.
Yeah.
She started, sending me to other people.
Mm-hmm.
But I've also taught kids who were coming from a homeschool situation,
Mm-hmm.
and they had great difficulties getting along with other kids.
Hmm.
And they also had sort of patchy learning. Not everyone, but there were big holes in what they knew.
Mm.
Simply because, when you're parenting, you also have to cook and get groceries, and so the parents would leave the kids, and do the other things. And so it was just very confusing, I think, for the kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. But to think in our lives, yeah, just to get an education as a child, yeah, depends on other kids. I mean, our whole education process. Did you ever have, how many times did we have one-on-one tutoring? Yeah? How many times? I don't know if I ever had anything like that, where somebody was going to stop and, do a whole class for me. One of my teachers might answer questions for me. Okay. But to do a whole class? Not for me. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, and then any kind of, even the existence of buildings, are people going to build it just for me? Okay. Somebody could say, well, we built that writing studio for you. But I think it was also for them, because they wanted to get me out of the house. Because when I lived in the house, then I saw everything everybody did. It was much better when I was staying in a different cabin. Yeah, but how much things really depend on us being a member of a group and bonding together with others and sharing together with others. Yeah, our whole Dharma practice. Our teachers aren't going to, teach a whole text just for us. I remember even in Dharamsala when one of my teachers told me to go to Geshe Nawan Darge and request teachings on a particular text. So I did that, and Geshe-la said yes, and then he invited many other people to the class. Yeah? So I happened to be the one who asked the question. I always seem to be the Shariputra who asked the question, and never the Avalokiteshvara who gives the answer. I'm usually the Shariputra who asks the question, and then I never understand the answer. Yeah. So, yeah. So, yeah, but just to think in our life how important others are to everything we know. Even people sewing clothes, they don't make the clothes specifically for us. It's because we are part of a group, yeah, that wears a certain size or likes a certain kind of cloth or whatever it is. Okay? And so often if people make the clothes just for us, then we get really picky. Oh, it doesn't fit right. I don't like it. I don't like this cloth. I want something else. Yeah. So, okay. So continue to do some more reflection on remembering sentient beings have been our mother, seeing their kindness as our mother or our father or our caregiver. And then that leads very naturally, the third point is to wanting to repay the kindness. And they say that this third point, you don't have to make a special effort to cultivate, because it's our natural human instinct when others have shown us kindness to give back to them. Maybe I need to reword that. It's not when others have shown us kindness. When we realize that others have shown us kindness, then it's our natural tendency to give back. The first two steps were the process of realizing that others have been kind. Because so often, like I said, we take things for granted and we expect them We get upset when we don't get them. And then we see others as mean. Whereas when we remember their kindness, and what we've received, then that feeling of gratitude arises, and then it becomes very easy to reciprocate. Okay? So the kind of reciprocation that we want to give here is not just, you were my mother, so I'm going to be your mother, or you cook for me, so I'm going to cook for you. But it's, others have been kind to me, I want to be kind in return. And then thinking, how can I be kind? What is the best use of my talents and abilities to repay the kindness of others? Okay, so that's a very important step, because sometimes others may want us to be kind to them in a certain way, but that may not be our talent, it may not be something we enjoy, it may not even be something that's good for them. It may be leading us into a completely icky, gooey, emotionally dependent, sticky, dysfunctional relationship. So we have the ability to choose how to reciprocate the kindness. And this is a very important step in really thinking how to do it and what is the best way to do it. And so I'm mentioning this right now, but it's going to come up particularly, I'll go into it in more depth when we come to the 6th step, which is the great resolve, because that's really thinking about exactly how to repay the kindness. But just to keep it in our mind right now, that it's not just feeling gratitude, but it's also having a component of wisdom. Of what is the best way to repay this kindness? And, that is a kind of wisdom that we're not taught in school. It's a different kind of wisdom that has different worldview assumptions. So we'll talk about it a little bit more, a little later. But anyway, repaying that kindness is the 3rd step. The 4th step is called heartwarming love. And this is seeing sentient beings in beauty, seeing them as lovable. Okay? So again, this is a very important step. And the more we can train our mind to see others as lovable and to see them in beauty, not physical beauty, but internal beauty, then the closer we feel to them and the less we feel alienated. Okay? And I think alienation is a big thing in our world. When I was late teens, early 20s, alienation was the big word, where we were all going around feeling alienated. You don't hear it so much anymore, but I think people experience it just the same. The things are too fast. The parents aren't even around in the home so often. Kids have so much expectation. And now even kids don't know how to relate to live human beings. They only know how to relate to screens. So, of course there's a feeling of alienation. Whereas when we see sentient beings as kind, when we see them as lovable, then we no longer feel alienated. We see that there's always a point of connection with other beings. So no matter who they are, what they look like, what they believe, because we've done the equanimity meditation, and we've overcome a lot of that bias and prejudice, then it's much easier to see others in beauty. And then whether it's somebody who's a street person or somebody in your office, or somebody who's just swindled the nation's investors, or, somebody who's broken into a bank, or no matter who it is. Yeah, you can see them in beauty. You can see them as lovable, and then that opens your heart, and you naturally feel close, and you don't feel alienated. Even if it's somebody. This is something that the prison work has really brought home to me, is learning to see that even the people who have done the things that most terrify you, or that you tend to think are the most awful things, that it's still possible to have positive feelings for these people. Yeah, because again, our society is, think of one event in somebody's life, make that person equivalent to that one action, and then brand them, and then you don't have to really deal with them. And for me, the prison work is really showing me how people are so complex, and, to be friends with somebody who was a rapist, and to see, no, that's not their identity. Yeah, this person's identity is not a rapist. They are somebody who, at one point in their life, committed rape because of their incredible, confusion and inner pain. But now, they're a completely different human being. Yeah? And I can trust this person. When I went to visit one prison this last summer, one of the men who drove me there, I met because he used to be an inmate in that prison, and he was in prison for rape. And here I was in a car driving down, alone with him, feeling completely relaxed. I mean, he's really nice man and very sincere in his Dharma practice. Very, very sincere. Yeah? So you learn to overcome these kind of limits we so often impose, and see that it's possible to establish relationships with different people. And I gave myself the job during... my teacher used to have these things called Enlightenment Experience Celebration. Yeah? Lama Yeshe, he came up with these fantastic titles. So he would get all the, monks and nuns there, and a good number of the lay people there. And the first EEC, we were together for like 3 months. And sometimes people think that because monks and nuns wear the same clothes and have the same hairdo, that we're very similar. So people have very, very different personalities, And some of the people have the kinds of personalities that you would not hang out with if you weren't having to live with them 24/7. Yeah. So it really pushes you, because you can't run away from these people. You live in the community with them. Yeah. So you have to deal with your mind. So I gave myself the assignment during those 3 months that I was going to have a good conversation, not just hello, goodbye, but actually make the effort to have a good conversation with each individual there. So that was my assignment, and I did it. And it was a real eye-opener for me, because I realized that when I made an effort, and it could depend completely on my effort, then I could find something to talk about with everybody. And once I found something to talk about with somebody, I could no longer put that person in the stranger, enemy, I don't care, I don't have to relate to them because they annoy me or they're weird or whatever it is. I can no longer put them in that category. Yeah? So it was a real, big experience. And so I highly recommend doing that. Make an effort to connect with somebody who you would normally turn your back to. Yeah. Maybe it's even sitting on the bus, somebody who you would never usually talk to. But find a way just to have a casual conversation. Yeah. I cannot tell you the number of times I have this karma to sit near fundamentalist Christians on plane rides, and have these long conversations. Yeah. So, it's just a very good exercise to stretch ourselves, I know for me, to bring it in another way, my family, when I grew up, I didn't know anybody except some school friends who were drafted into the military. My parents didn't have any friends who were in the military. Yeah, and I didn't know anything about people in the military. And in fact, I was kind of like, even though they were on our side, it's like people with guns, and I'm not so sure about this. Yeah, and so it was quite an amazing thing. First of all, when some of my high school friends went in the military, but then often I said, well, those were the kids I didn't know so well anyway. But when we started the Abbey here, some of the first people who came to help us with the renovation were vets. Yeah. There was one family that came. Both of them the mother and father had been in the Navy. Another family, the husband was an Iraq veteran. He brought his friend who was also an Iraq veteran. Then all of a sudden, now we have 2 nuns who were in the military. It's like my mind really had to change there, and open up. Yeah, so a very, very good experience for me. Very good. Yeah, so I really, recommend to all of us to try and stretch ourselves a little bit. And this meditation, seeing the kindness of others and seeing our dependency on others, helps us stretch in that way. Mm-hmm.
I'm having a really hard time with the whole sexual offenders thing. Is there another way we could look at that maybe? I mean, I just immediately go to, can't do it.
Yeah.
Can't do it.
Yeah.
It's so often.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And even those I don't know that they did it, I can talk to them for hours.
Mm-hmm.
But the minute they tell me I did that, I don't know why in me, it just shuts down, boom.
Yeah. Okay. And this is very much the prejudice that sexual offenders face in society. And you're right, many of them do reoffend. Yeah. And so how do we get beyond seeing that person as that's who they are in life? That's all they are. That's all they ever will be.
It's more of a trust thing, like.
Yeah.
I can probably, I mean, I from a distance, I could try to be loving and compassionate. I mean, I know that they didn't come out as a rapist.
Mm-hmm.
They grow up to be a rapist.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to be rapists. But now that they are, I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe try changing the label. Instead of saying they are a rapist, say there's somebody who committed a rape.
Yeah. No, yeah, I do.
Yeah. So you're not identifying the action with the entire person. Okay? Then also, something that might help, because it could very well be a trust issue, and sometimes, we need to be wise too, don't we? We need to be wise. We can't be foolish. Yeah? But to think, if you're in a safe place where there's many people around, and you talk to somebody and they reveal that they were, imprisoned or maybe not imprisoned for being a sexual offender, then to know, okay, I'm in a safe place. I can talk to this person. Nothing's going to happen. And let's just try and see what this person is like in other areas of their life.
And I've worked with kids that were rapists, or have committed rape,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm perfectly able to love them and try to help them.
Mm-hmm.
It's when I think of people farther away, like the people in prison, somewhere in my mind it just goes, they don't know them. It's like that trust in it. I don't know them, so I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
It's so resistant to doing that to somebody who's a stranger, but the person is with me.
Okay. Yeah. So if and especially in the situation where you were the nurse caring for those kids, you could love them and so on. But I think part of this attitude comes because of the way crime has been politicized in the country, and the public has been taught to be terrified of criminals, because they're going to be out to get you. And we've forgotten to see that they're regular people who have made a mistake. Yeah. And sometimes very serious mistakes. But that's not all that they are. And so this is one thing that I really see from the prison work I've done, is you get to know somebody, you hear their story, you hear about their other interests, you see, some of the guys I work with are incredible artists. Yeah? And you by having that contact, that in a safe environment, it helps you break down those preconceptions and those walls. Yeah. So maybe one day, if you want to, when we go to Airway Heights, maybe you can come with us. And, we go and we do activities with the Buddhist group. And so that might be a situation where you could, put your toes in. John?
One comment I would make, Tree, to you is that I work with a lot of sex offenders. I have to defend them occasionally. Is just like Venerable was saying, there are a lot of people in prison right now, not a little, a lot, that were in their 20s or 30s and had sex with 16 and 17-year-old girls. Mm-hmm. And those are just artificial labels that we've manufactured over the years, when if you go back, 150 years ago, 25-year-old guys were marrying 16-year-old girls and starting families. And my experience with sex offenders has definitely been that, for the most part, they're people just like anybody else, and they did a bad thing and they know it. That's it. That's my comment for you.
Yeah. Okay. This will be the last comment, and then we're going to do some meditation.
I this last year had the opportunity to work with addicts in jail, and one of the things I realized when I first went to jail, I could, tremendous amount of resistance, and the Dharma practice actually has been really beneficial because you see resistance as resistance, and you try to open to that. But getting to know, I work with a group of other people in the program. These are really working with men, and hearing the stories, and particularly getting to know some of the men who, a man who looks 70 and is my age, and he knows that he's going to get out of the jail, and he's going to go get a fix, and he's going to create crime, and he's going to come back in. And that's actually kind of his job. And he doesn't want to do it, but he's so habituated. And there aren't a lot of resources to assist him in helping to break that. Sometimes he has successes. Sometimes he talks about being able to stay straight for 30 days, or 45 days, or 60 days. But he's been doing this pattern over the entire his life since he was 25 years old, and he's in hell.
Yeah, yeah, complete hell. Complete hell, yeah. Okay, so let's review some of the points. Okay, so we talk some more about the kindness of parents and understanding their situation and their conditioning, and that they've been kind according to their ability. Yeah, and so pulling ourselves out of just thinking of everything in terms of ourselves to see the bigger picture of what their lives were like. Yeah, we talked about gratitude. We talked about, being part of a group and depending upon others to help us have so many good situations in our life, because it wouldn't happen if it were just for us. We talked about the kindness of others a little bit when they've done other work in society, and how even if people have been our parents and we see them as kind, they're not going to be our parents in future lives. We won't even recognize them in future lives, and yet how can we keep up that feeling of connection with them and seeing them as kind? Even if they have Alzheimer's in this life, let alone future lives, not recognizing each other. What else did we talk about? Yeah, benefiting in a group, and thinking wisely about how to repay the kindness. So we spent a long time on gratitude, and then how that leads us to repay the kindness, but then thinking wisely about how specifically to repay it. And heartwarming love, yeah. Seeing others in beauty. Yeah, finding a way to communicate with people we wouldn't normally communicate with in order to see them as human beings, and finding that we do have something in common with them, we can share something with them. Okay, so let's take about 10 minutes and do some reflection, and then after your break you can continue the reflection.